Hello and welcome back, guys. This is Ibrahim Qureshi here, and today we are going to have a quick demo of how to configure Iscuzzy storage for your ESX environment, for your VMware environment, for your lab using FreeNAS. So I have used FreeNAS 11.2, I think this is 11.3. So just to bear something in mind, this is based on FreeBSD. So when you are creating, when you download the, first of all you need to log into the website freenas.org, download the ISO from here. You need to remember FreeNAS 11.3 minimum requirement is you need to create a virtual machine which is a 64-bit CPU, or even if you are installing it on a physical server which has storage attached, you need to make sure it has a minimum of 8 GB of memory on that server. Now let's get started. So I have already installed FreeNAS here. Installation is fairly simple. You just enable the basically if you are doing it on a virtual machine, make sure you create a virtual machine which is a FreeBSD virtual machine. You need to select other to do that. I will quickly show that option as well once I open my lab. So when you're creating a virtual machine for FreeNAS, make sure you right click. When you create a virtual machine, you need to have a FreeBSD virtual machine. So let's click next. FreeBSD, well, FreeNAS in this instance. That's fine, leave that on whatever it is. Over here you can see other, and make sure you drop down and go to FreeBSD 11 64-bit, or if you can see here FreeBSD pre-11 versions. So the one which we need is 11 because we are going to install FreeBSD 11. It's going to be a 64-bit edition, not a 32. So make sure you select that, click next, and then basically it will ask you for how much memory. Make sure you give 4 CPUs and 8 gig memory. So that's basically the quick setup on the FreeNAS side. Although I want to remind you that the hard drive, you need to add a 20 gig for the OS, and make sure it's thin provision again so that you save the space in your lab. Any devices which you want to present, the data store which we want to present from this storage, we are going to have it added as a individual disk. So add a new disk. Say for example, I will add a brand new disk of 100 gig which I'm going to be presenting over here to my lab. Make sure again it's thin provisioned. If you want to add 2 LUNs minimum, that is recommended, because for having a cluster with HA running you need to have 2 LUNs minimum. So oops, not existing one, I need to have a new one. And then just make sure you add another 100 gig LUN. Okay, and then make sure it is thin provision as well. So I'm going to skip the part of installation. It's as simple as just sticking the CD in and following the steps. So this is the configuration you need to have. So remember that we selected FreeBSD as the operating system, FreeBSD 11 64-bit. We have selected 4 CPUs and 8 gig memory. I have one network card which is more than enough. On the storage side, we need to remember that the OS is going to be installed on the 20 gig drive, and leave the 100 gig drive and the other 100 gig drive which is going to be the 2 data stores on this environment. Make sure you always use thin provision so that you maximize the over provisioning you can do on your environment. So that's about it for the hardware side. Let's click finish, the VM will be created. However, I have my VM running already in the environment to save some time for today's session. So here's my FreeBSD running active. I have already provisioned some storage, and I have been playing around with this since a month now. CLI interface, similar to this, and then it will ask you to configure the IP. Press this, like so. There you go. So it's going to be similar to this. So make sure you select the first option and configure the network interface, and you set this to be on a static IP address, not your DHCP, because this is going to be your storage server. You don't want it to reboot and catch another IP, then all your VMs will be disappeared because your storage is gone and booted with a different IP. When it booted, it picked up a different IP. So make sure you, just another tip basically, make sure you select static IP addresses, and then configure the DNS and everything, like root password. When you create it, make sure you remember that, because only then you'll be able to enter this interface. Okay, once we are in the interface, what I would suggest is, because we are going to use Iscuzzy, first thing we need to do is to go to services, and over here you'll find FreeNAS has a lot of services. It can be used for NFS, for Iscuzzy, but we are going to use it for Iscuzzy. So we basically will enable the Iscuzzy service to start off. So first enable this service, which is just flipping this here. Start automatically. So when you reboot your machine, you need to make sure it starts automatically. If not, obviously if you reboot this, you need to manually come back here and then enable it every time. So make sure you select that. And then the next thing we need to do is, first we create a brand new disk. So for this machine, I'm going to add a brand new disk, which you can witness so that you can follow. So this, let's do a thin provision disk, which is going to be 40 gig disk. Okay, as you can see in the disk which I have created, I have, in the demo which I have created for you, I created 200 gig disk. Over here we are going to add a 40 gig disk. I have already got quite a lot of disk here. 20 gig disk is the one where the OS is running. I have a 200 GB disk, I have a 30 GB disk, and I have a 10 GB disk. So we are going to add a brand new disk which is for 40 GB. Click on OK. So what we do first is we go to storage, and then we click on pools. So there are three different things which we need to remember. So the first thing we need to do is to create a pool. So as you can see, I have different pools here. Ignore what I have here. Let's start from beginning. So I'll click on add and then create a new pool. I'll click create a pool, and then I'll select disk, and I can instantly see the new disk which I have. Another thing, you can check out the disk here if you want to. If you click on disk, as soon as you add a new virtual disk, you can click here and see whether the disk has come up, and you will be able to see it here as well. So let me quickly show you that. So the new disk which I have added is 40 gig and it's available here. And these are the other disks which we were talking about, the 20 gig, the 210 and 30. So, and again, this is the boot pool, so you don't touch that disk at all. Okay, so let's go back to storage, and then in storage we are going to go to pool, and then let's ignore what we have here for a moment, and let's say whether if this is a brand new setup, we just click on add, create a new pool, yeah, select disk, okay, and then you'll see this disk come up which is 40 gig. Select that and add it here. So that's the first thing we did. But first, before that, we need to add a name. We'll add data store 05. So that's the name of my disk, which so always I have noticed that it becomes increasingly difficult if you name things randomly. So if I am creating a new data store which is 40 gig, make sure you don't specify any capacity, but make sure you remember it what you have given, and use the same naming convention everywhere, because what I mean by that is you have to have initiators created when you are creating this, so you need to be having that consistency. So let's talk through it. So data store, yeah, 05, create, confirm. Now this is just the pool for data store 5 which we have created. The actual device or actual ZFS file system which we call, or the raw data is not going to be stored in this. You need to still create a partition for that. So what we are going to do next is we create the partition which will complete this section for creating the storage. So what we have done is, because I didn't have a disk, I had to add a disk. For you might already have that 100 gig 2 disk which we have, so you just need to create 2 of these. So add and then add 100 GB and then again add the other disk on another pool and call it something else, like maybe you will call it data store 1 and 2. Over here I have called it 5. Now I can see the disk here. What I can do here is I need to create a data set now. So I'll go here and then say add zwall, which is a volume. Now for this zwall I'm going to call it data store store 05 hyphen lun 5. Just want to see the naming convention before I commit to that. Just 1 second. Going to compare with this one. Okay, 04 and lun 4. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go back here, close all this, create a Z wall, and then I'm going to call it data store 05 hyphen lun 05. Okay, you could potentially add a comment as well that this is lun 5, but that's fine. And then what we do here is we specify how much storage you want to give for this data store. Remember, we have added a 40 gig LUN here for an example, but I can choose to give it only half of what I have created. So maybe I'll give 20, well, more than half. Let's give 25 GB. Remember, what will happen is it won't be actually giving you 25. It will have some partitioning and stuff like that. So you'll get less than 25 when it is finally provisioned. So that's going to be creating that partition now. And as you can see over here, you can see that healthy and 25 GB is provisioned, which is 70% used. 10 GB is free. Okay. So out of 40, you still have some of it which you can extend later on if you wish to. Okay. So now what we are going to do, available 36, so well, pretty much, so you still have some there. So this section is done, the storage section is done. The next, remember guys, so far what we have seen is we have seen the services where we enable the Iscuzzy service, and we went to storage, and then basically we created pool called data store 5, and then we added the 40 gig disk in that pool, which for you it will be 100 gig, right? And then once you do the first 100 gig, repeat the process and add the second 100 gig disk and call it Datastore 2 maybe. And when you create the volumes, the Z volumes, call it Datastore hyphen LUN1 or LUN2, whatever you want to, but make sure you specify that same names. So next we will be jumping on to sharing, and then you'll find a lot of options here for sharing. So you can share this to a Windows, a Unix, and an Apple file system if you want, AFP. You can share it to Apple with an NFS as well, and SMB as well. Here we are going to look at block Iscuzzy. Now by default we will have to create a global configuration, and when your system is configured it will basically come up with the global configuration. I haven't given ISN server name, but it's up to you. This will be automatically created. This follows the IEEE standard naming convention, and they basically came up with, this is the format of creating the Iscuzzy. Now before diving into a little bit, as I said, Iscuzzy is used to connect to your hard drive, basically your disk or your data. So traditionally you have your computer and you have your disk on top of your computer, or you have used a SCSI serial bus or something to connect to your data. But what if you are sitting on your laptop here and your data is far off on a different computer? So you need to have some protocol to connect. So iSCSI allows you to connect to your data which is on your block storage on your on a different computer using the IP protocol. So that is why instead of having a local bus, it's going through the IP traffic. That is why it is called iSCSI. So hope that concept is clear. Now first what we need to do is think of this as a three-step process. Okay, what we are achieving here is basically the same thing which I just told you. So we have your demo cluster which has the ESX host, and then you have your shared storage here which is presented from FreeNAS. So as you can see, this host is connecting to 1, 2 and 3, and then this host is connecting to 1, 2 and 3 data stores, and it's presented through FreeNAS. It doesn't need to be in production environment. It could be EMC, 3PAR, NetApp, whatever it might be, but the concept is going to be the same. Why do we need shared storage? Is because all these VMs which we are running in this cluster are now available and accessible by both of these hosts. Now in your production environment, if this host goes down, as long as it has access, this host has access to these VMs, which it will be because it's shared storage across all these hosts, it will be able to power on these virtual machines, and you can leverage something called high availability from VMware. And then you will be also able to create clusters, as I have created a cluster for storage, and then it will automatically balance itself out. It will move them around, and it will basically be a lot of admin overhead which you have if you don't have clusters. So that will be all taken care of. So this is why you need to have shared storage, and this is why we are basically configuring shared storage. Should have told it in the beginning, but I had it ready here, but I completely forgot. So at least we got to it. So the other concept which I was saying is this server you can present Iscuzzy to a server which could be a Windows server or a Linux server. Yeah, so that's also another thing which we can do. And also what we could do potentially is that can directly access from here. Okay, and then ESX as well can access. So obviously it's not just for one technology which we are talking here for shared storage. It can be used on your Windows server as a share, or a Linux server, whatever it is. Okay, let's get back to where we were. Now this is the second phase which we are going to discuss. I only discussed about the target global config. Now leave this alone because this is from the IEEE standards, and it will be automatically creating this name for you. Now we need to go to the portal. Now portal is where you can say it's like an Iscuzzy initiator or a daemon which basically runs on your Linux machine, right? So leave it at 0000. You can make it very secure and you can lock it down to your network. I think it is a good idea to do it when you're doing it on your production environment, but on your lab just leave it to 000, and this particular is the port. Leave it as it is. 3260 is the port for Iscuzzy, so leave it as it is. Okay, and then we'll go to the initiators. Now as you can see, I have already got some stuff running here. Let's just ignore it. What we'll do here is we'll allow initiators to all and authorize all the networks because it's a lab environment. But what we'll do is let's get started with this. So let's copy one of this so that we have the same naming convention. Add the initiator, and this is going to be 5, as this is the Datastore 5. Leave this to all, sorry, and then just add a comment that this is going to be Datastore 5. Okay, and then save this. So as you can see, it has grouped it with group 4, but initiators are all. That means obviously it's an initiator which is going to be available for any of the host which is in your environment, and authorized network is going to be any, and I have named it Datastore 5 LAN 5 for my convenience. Now we need to go to, well, authorized access. We are not going to put any restrictions here, so we'll move on to targets. So targets are basically, think of it as you have your device and you need to point it to a target. So we are going to point our data store, which we have created, O5, and we need to create a target and an alias name. Now it will all piece together when we start doing extent. So all these three different things, basically they will all glue together when we do the next bit. So let's carry on with doing this next bit, which is creating a target name and an alias for the target name. So over here we'll be giving a target name, and then target alias, and then over here we will use the FreeNAS because this is our portal group ID, which if you remember the first tab which we had is the portal group, and over here is the most important bit, the initiator group which we created on the previous section has come up here now, and it was labeled as number 4, but we labeled it as Datastore 5 LAN 5, so we know exactly it's the new data store which I have created with 25 gig. So select that. Authentication, we are not going to touch this, or authentication group number, we are not going to touch it. So make sure you select that and then click save. Portal ID, portal group ID is something which I'll quickly show you again, because then you will need to remember that. So this is the block Iscuzzy section which we are working on so far. So this is the third section we are working on, remember that. So this is the portals, and I said portal is 1, which is FreeNAS, which it was coming up with. So that was the portal we selected, and then we selected the initiator which we created here, which came up as 4. So always remember, go from the left to right and you won't find any problem. So this is already created, this tab, as I said earlier. Then we came to the portal which is already there because your FreeNAS was there. If you are doing for the first time, you need to create and you need to add a portal. A target should come up automatically. If not, just create a target and then add a portal, and then you need to make sure it's 0000 so that it's allowing everything, all the traffic. And also obviously you need to name the portal. So portal group ID, which is 1 over here, and this is a comment which you can find when we added that initiator. So then we went here and then we added the initiator and network authorization to all, and the group ID came up as 4, and then Datastore 05 LUN5 I commented. We skipped this section and then we came to target. We saw two important things here. We'll quickly go and edit it again. So this is a quick recap. So I labeled it target name and alias name, but portal group ID is 1, which we saw, and over here we found our initiator which we created on the initiator group, and it was 4 and Datastore 5. So happy till now. Then what we'll do is we'll move on. So this is the extent. This is very important. So we need to now create an extent. Again, you see how we are following the sequence, right? So extent is very important. We need to have an extent, which means have the data which we created in our environment. So the data was it was a pool, and the pool was having 25 gig of data which we assigned. So we basically provision only 25 gig out of that 40 gig, right? So over here we are going to assign that now. So if we go here, extent name, I'm going to do it as the same name, however I'll call it extent hyphen. So I know this is extent. Device type, always leave this to device. Some people try to do it with files and give a path and stuff. I would suggest this is block storage, leave it as device and keep it simple really. Now over here you can see that the data which you created, the drive which you created after that, the LUN which I was calling it, is now 25 gig, and we can see it here, and it is under this name, Datastore 5 slash Datastore 5 LUN 5. As you can see, there is another Datastore here with 25 gig, but you won't get confused now because you labeled it properly and you know exactly that it is LUN 5 and Datastore 5, not this one. So make sure you select the right one. And now you have selected, given the extent Datastore 5, LUN 5, the name as well. And that's about it on this section. Click Save. So there you go, extent is created now. And now you are going to glue everything together. So you got the extent which has this storage disk provision 25 gig. You got the target which has the portal and the initiator. So these two have been combined here. And you have the extent which basically glued up the storage which we created in the Z full with 25 gig, and it has been integrated in this extent here. Now is the last and final tab before we jump to our ESX host. And over here we are going to again add, and all we have to do here is just select Datastore 5 LUN 5, and then LUN ID is going to be 5, extent is going to be Datastore 5 LUN 5. Yeah, so basically we are adding the target to the extent and we are just giving a LUN ID. Now if you know about storage, whenever you present any storage from the storage devices, it comes up with a LUN ID, and this basically, this data store is going to come up as LUN ID 5 because we have given LUN ID 5 here. Okay, so save this and voila, this is your job done on FreeNAS. I know it has taken a little bit, but it's a necessary thing to go through again and again so that you glue it up in your mind. And I can't stress more about the naming convention which I have followed here. Make sure you try and follow to whichever standard you want, but try to keep everything individual and don't cross-reference your LUNs or data stores. That's the tip here. Okay, so our job here is done. Your LUN is now presented, which is 25 gig. Now we are going to go to your ESX host, and guess what? I have just built a brand new ESX host for you guys to start from scratch. So you'll witness how to add a new host and how to provision a new disk. So the name of this host is ESX what's happening to me, ESXi-v03. Okay, so let's get started here. I'm going to pull up Internet Explorer. So go to host and clusters. There you go, guys. This is the second part of the demo where we are going to add the storage. Now we are going to add a new host first, and then quickly we'll do the rest. ESXi-v03.agileops.co.uk, root, and my password. Next, ESXi-v03 select this thumbprint, show thumbprint. Now you can see the brand new host is connecting now. It's saying that is VMware hardware because it's a nested ESX host, version 7, and it's all ready now to be added. So you'll see it added here soon enough. You can see the task progressing, that the host is getting added, and I can see the host coming up in the bottom here. It's not going inside the cluster, but we'll wait for the host to be added completely, and looks like it is added completely. And then let's go and drop it here because I want it in this cluster. So there you go, the host is come up here. So that was a quick demo of adding a host, I guess, for you guys. It's reconfiguring HA, so we need to pause a little bit for this host to get settled down. And then first thing we are going to do is we are going to create a VM kernel port for adding your Iscuzzy initiator. Before adding an Iscuzzy initiator. Okay, so what does that mean? That basically means you need to have another IP address reserved for adding a new network to talk to your storage. So what are we going to do? We are going to do pretty much like this. So we need to have so this is our new host we are adding, ESXi-v03. Yeah, so this need to have management IP, which we have. Now it needs to have a VM kernel iSCSI, Iscuzzy IP address. So that Iscuzzy IP address is going to be used to communicate. So let's choose a different color with your storage. Okay, and then so that's the first step. Okay, so that is our first step. So let's put some steps here. First step is add a VM kernel port for Iscuzzy. Then second step will be adding Iscuzzy software initiator. Okay, and then we'll be basically adding, the third step will be adding the FreeNAS IP address as dynamic and rescan. Fourth step, rescan the devices, storage devices, adapter slash devices, and then we can see the storage, and then we just provision the data store 05 LUN 05, which has 25 GB of space. Hope it makes sense. So let's crack on, guys. So first step is adding a VM kernel port. I've already reserved an IP for this. It is 13, I think it is 13. I can quickly 113, sorry, and let's look up. So it was 192.168.1.113. yeah, so I have reserved this IP for Iscuzzy for this particular host. So that's what we are going to use. So let's get here. So as you can see, the host is ready now. It does have a alert here, HA host status. Okay, so I can work on that issue later on. It doesn't have resilience. I know that it only has one network card. So what we'll do is we'll go to configure, and then we'll go to VM kernel adapters, and now we'll be adding a new VM kernel adapter. So we'll go add a network adapter, and then we'll select virtual VM kernel adapter, which is fine, and then click on next, and then we'll say select an existing network or select a existing standard switch. So it will be an existing standard switch, which is switch 0, which is already created. Click OK. You could have another network card attached because this is a nested ESX environment, and then use that, but for now I'm just going to be using the same v60. So I'll call it iSCSI -TRAFFIC. We don't need anything here, but we need an IP address, as I mentioned earlier. So we'll be assigning, not automatic, the IP address which I have selected, which is 13. My subnet is /24. Okay, and then the gateway, as you can see, it has picked it up and it knows it has got the DNS for me anyway. So there you go, guys. This is how you add the adapter, and it will come up here, Iscuzzy adapter. So that's step 1 done. It's a green tick box here. I'll just say this is done. Let's draw a square there, and then now we are going to add a Iscuzzy software initiator. Let's add a Iscuzzy software initiator. So for that you need to go to the storage devices. So go to storage adapter first, and again we know that there is no storage devices here, but no, it's only the local disk, yeah, and then the CD-ROM drive which it thinks it has. If you go to Datastore, there is nothing here. Can you see that? There's no Datastore at all. So we go back to configure. That was a quick checks before we go ahead. So go to configure, go to storage adapters, and then we'll add a software adapter, and then the one we'll add is add a software Iscuzzy adapter, because that is what we are going to use. Click OK. Did you see that? Quickly something came up in the recent task and it was creating an initiator, and it has done it now. And what I'll do is I'll select all so that people can see what's happening. So there you go, change software initiator status. So that's me doing all these. So it basically opened the firewall and everything in the background for you, so you don't need to worry about it. So there you go, your Iscuzzy is created here. Now we are very close to our demo, end of the demo. We are nearly there. So what has happened is we added a Iscuzzy software initiator. Now we are going to add the FreeNAS IP address. Okay, yeah, address is spelled wrong. You know, I do a lot of typos, but this is what we are going to do. So the IP address for my FreeNAS, if you guys didn't pick it up, it was no, you don't need to give an IP, you can also give the domain name. Let's try giving the domain name. But I have got the IP address is one. You can check it from here as well. Go to networks, global config. So the IP address is 192.168.1.150. But let's and I think I would suggest really to do that. Do the IP address instead of name, domain name, because it's better. If your DNS is down, then you lose your storage, right? So why would you take the risk? So again, this labs is all demos is all about discussing what is best to do, and I would suggest to do that. So we select, okay, so we created this Iscuzzy target software adapter. Select the software adapter and then click on dynamic discovery, click on add, and then the easiest thing you can do is add the IP. Well, I copied the domain name, but let's stick to IP. It was 192.168.1.150. Click on OK, and then it should ask you to scan. Yes, can you see that? Due to recent configuration changes, a scan of VMHVA65, which is this one, is recommended. So go ahead and rescan storage. Click OK, and then at the bottom you'll see all rescanning happening. It's waiting, it's trying to do the rescan. It's completed. Now the magic happens if you click on the static discovery. Now you should be able to see all the LUNs which has been created so far. Bingo. And this is the brand new LUN which we created just now, which is 05. And you can, along with that, you can see all the other LUNs, which was Datastore 1, 2 and 4, which we were talking about. If you go here, this section takes more time because it scans all the storage. So there you go, data stores 1, 2 and 4. 3 I deleted it because it was thick provision, I didn't like it, and I couldn't figure out how to get rid of this from here, so that's why I ended up creating 4. And then now we have created together 5, which is 25 gig. Now the last part is how to provision it on the data store. So these LUNs were already provisioned in this environment, so you can already see they have appeared, but you can't see the Datastore file anywhere here. Yeah, so what we'll do is, first of all, I will copy the name because I want to keep the naming standard, as you know, I want standards to be followed. So now we'll right click on the host. It doesn't matter which host you want to add it to, but we just added a brand new host, so it was convenient for you guys to see it as well. So we click on any host and go to storage, and then you say rescan storage first. So just to be sure, we have rescanned it so many times, but we didn't rescan it on the first one, that's why I'm rescanning it. And I have found it that if you increase the storage, you need to make sure you rescan the host, or the easiest way to do is if you have like 10 hosts in the cluster, you don't need to do scan one at a time. You just click on the cluster like I did here, and then go to storage, and then you say rescan, and then it should go ahead and rescan all the hosts one by one for you. See, can you see that all three of them, it's rescanning all at once. So the rescan is done. Now we are going to right click again, doesn't matter which one, let's choose 3 again, and that we just go new storage, and then we select which storage we want. We are not doing vVols, we are not doing NFS, we are going to do VMFS file system, and then select next. Now over here is your 25 GB disk. Can you see that? So that is the local disk where the OS is installed, and that's why it says local VMware disk, and this is coming from FreeNAS, and it does have FreeNAS written on it as well, as you can see, and it has this long gibberish number which is called the NAA number, which is coming from the storage. So select that, click on next, and then it will ask you which file system, VMS 5 or 4 or 6. So VMS 6, of course. Click next, and then it will, hang on, did I name it? No, I didn't. Dear me. So just name it 5, FreeNAS LUN 5, and then click next, next again. So we are going to use all the 25 gig. What we can do, if you want to do another demo of extension of disk, you can basically, instead of use all available, configure it and say, okay, I want to use only 25 gig data store size. Well, we can extend it from the back, use all of it for now, because I can extend it from, because I saved 10 gig already on the FreeNAS, so I can extend it from FreeNAS and we can do a quick rescan. So finish. Now you can see 25 gig storage here, which is ready to be added, and you just click on finish, and then you should see it come up. As you can see, it's creating VFS file system, and there you go, the disk has come up. You can see here the data store cluster is there, and all these three data stores are a part of this cluster. Now storage in VMware world is called data store. From the storage world, basically it's called logical unique number, LUN, and then we call it LUN ID 1 or LUN ID 5. So this basically was the LUN presented from FreeNAS, and you can see it's a 25 gig one, and on VMware we'll call it data store. This is why it comes up on a data store tab. Now this data store is basically somewhere, we have a data store tab here as well, and you'll notice that I've created a data store cluster as well. It's similar to how we create the ESX host cluster. So this data store cluster, I can add this LUN in this data store cluster. We'll go in detail when we are going through our sessions what benefits we have. There is a number of benefits for creating data store clusters as well. So there you go, that's the brand new LUN, how we create it. Just before we finish, I will quickly show you how to increase the data store size as well. So go here on your FreeNAS, and then you can see the volume here, which is 25 gig. Select that and edit the volume. So this is the one which we created as 25 gig. We will make it 30 and then save. There's nothing else that needs to be done. As soon as you increase this on your storage side, because it's presented as VMFS, all you have to do is do a rescan. So once it is completely provisioned from your storage, or your storage team can be a separate team, once they have done it, you can see that it's now gone to 84%. It was 70% before, so it says 30%, 30 GB now instead of 25 GB used. So that's done successfully, which we have cross-checked. But over here, what's happening? If we go data stores, this LUN is still 25 gig, well 24 something, so it has not been extended. You can even extend it on the fly, so you could potentially have VM sitting here, and all of a sudden you could have seen, oh my god, this data store is getting filled and it's only 10% remaining. So what can we do? Do I have to create a big one, or no? You just need to extend it from the background ask your storage admin to extend it, and you can extend it here. Click on the demo cluster. So you can see 25 gig roughly, right? So we'll extend it here, increase, and you can see a 5 gig extension here, which LUN ID is 5. As I was saying, when I was provisioning it, its LUN ID was 5. So this is another way of cross-checking that you're not actually using a different LUN other than what you should be using. So LUN ID is 5 and it's 30 gig, and it was 20 gig before, 25 gig before. So you select that, click next, and then it will ask you want to use the full space. So this is the empty space and this is the previous space. So you can say, yeah, use 5 gig to expand the data store, and click next, finish, and then you should be able to see 29. There you go. So that's about it, guys. I hope you liked this demo. It was fully dedicated to storage and FreeNAS. It's a very good product. I have been using it since a long time. If you like my video, please don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment on below and let me know whether you used it, installed it in your lab, and if you are enjoying using the FreeNAS really. And my website is agileops.co.uk, so be sure to subscribe to my website and my channel, which is the one that you're watching now. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at Ibrahim Qureshi. Cheers, bye.